Welcome, and thank everyone for joining. I'm Lisa Delpy Neirotti, a professor at George Washington University and a longtime Olympic scholar. In February, SafeSport appointed its new chief executive officer, Benita Fitzgerald Mosley. Benita is an established executive leader in nonprofit, sports, and business. A world-class athlete, Benita won a gold medal in the 100-meter hurdles in the 1984 Los Angeles Olympic Games, where I actually witnessed her remarkable achievement of being the first American woman and first Black woman to accomplish this feat. She has previously served as the Chief Operating Officer of the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee, where she helped craft early athlete safeguarding policies and has held various other executive sports leadership roles. She brings a wealth of experience and deep experience of the Olympic and Paralympic movement. Before I turn it over to Benita, here are some important housekeeping announcements. First, the event is being recorded. The center will not be able to speak to any specific cases. In terms of content warning and support, this discussion will touch on the topics of misconduct that happens in sports, including sexual, physical, and emotional abuse. We will not get into details, but please be advised that these topics may come up. For anyone who needs support during the event, the Athletes Assist, formerly the Army of Survivors, is available. They are independent from the center and are providing a separate Zoom space for anyone who needs it. Center staff will share the Zoom link and other contact information for the assist in the chat. The flow for today is first, we'll hear remarks from Benita, which will be followed by a Q&A session that will include questions submitted in advance. At approximately 12:40 Mountain Time, there will be an opportunity for live questions through the Q&A function. As a reminder, staff at the center and participants within the movement are all mandatory reporters of child abuse and must notify law enforcement should you disclose allegations of child abuse. If we do not get to all the questions, attendees will receive a follow-up email with answers. You will also receive a list of links to all resources mentioned here today. Now, without further ado, I'd like to turn this over to Benita.
Well, thanks so much, Lisa. Thank you for joining us. Like you said, you're an Olympic scholar, and we're really blessed to have you join us today. I also want to thank the Athlete Survivors Assist for offering support should anyone need it during this program. I want to welcome everyone to the 2026 State of SafeSport. It's my very first one, and I want to thank all of you for joining us today. I hear there's over 300 registrants, so there's a lot of interest in hearing about what SafeSport is up to. As an athlete, I always felt safe and supported, and whether I was running on a local club team or for USA Track and Field or the AAU, at my alma mater, the University of Tennessee, or even, for Team USA, I believe that every athlete deserves to compete free from the fear of harm. And unfortunately, that's not always the case. And that's why the U.S. Center for Safe Sport was established back in 2017. And it's also why I accepted this opportunity to step in and lead this organization into its next chapter. I'm also a mom of athletes, and from hearing Lisa's kind introduction that I'm also an Olympic athlete and gold medalist myself. So this work is really very personal to me. I know firsthand how empowering and transformative sport could be. And as the first organization of its kind in the world, there was really no blueprint when SafeSport opened its doors back in 2017. Even so, there's no denying that here at the center, we've moved the needle on athlete safety nationally. Whether it's the 2,600 individuals who are currently restricted from sport and listed on our centralized disciplinary database, the minor athlete abuse prevention policies, or the MAP, that sets guardrails for how adults interact with minors in sport, or the millions of individuals who've been trained through SafeSport. SafeSport is helping to shift sport culture in the right direction. Although we know that SafeSport has met many challenges over the years, and we're now at an inflection point as we approach our 10th anniversary next year. It's time to take stock and reflect on the missteps and lessons learned as we seek to reimagine what excellence in safeguarding and athlete protection can truly be. I knew when I stepped into this role that this work would be filled with challenges, but as you heard, I'm a hurdler after all, so I'm pretty used to overcoming challenges. And trust me, my first 5 months as CEO has definitely been a sprint. And what really struck me the most, I think, in these last few months is that Safe Sport is bigger than the 150 people who work directly for the organization. We have athletes and parents and coaches and survivors, national governing bodies, the local clubs all over the country at our grassroots level, the USOPC. All of us make up what I like to call the Safe Sport system. And all of us have a role in creating a safe and supportive environment where participants can thrive and they can fulfill their true potential, safe from the fear of harm. For SafeSport to fully realize our mission of protecting athletes, it will take better coordination and cooperation among all the people I mentioned that are part of this SafeSport system. And that's why when I first started as CEO, I quickly launched both an internal cultural audit as well with our staff, as well as a national listening tour. I wanted to better understand how we can better serve the needs of those within the system, particularly our athletes. The input we received guided the development of our new strategic plan. And then after we got the plan, the first iteration of the plan, we spent the last couple of months going back to our stakeholders. We met with the Team USA Athletes Commission, our own Safe Sport Athlete Advisory Team, national governing bodies, survivor advocates, and many others to get additional feedback to solidify the plan that I will present to you today. But first, I want to give you an overview of what SafeSport's three core pillars are and also share some recent updates from our 2025 annual report that we just released today. Before we dive in, I think it's really important to understand SafeSport's three core pillars, how they work together, and how they work together to enhance safety in sport. First and foremost, we have our education and prevention, which I believe are the foundation of our work. We are focused on educating everyone within this Safe Sport system. So that's all the participants in the Olympic and Paralympic movement in the United States. We want to educate them on abuse prevention and response to provide the sport community with these best practices for safety. The second pillar is organizational accountability, which is another essential component of the model. We ensure that the safety policies that are developed by SafeSport, the SafeSport Code, the MAP, et cetera, are followed by our national governing bodies, the USOPC and their affiliates, so local organizing bodies like clubs and events. We offer them compliance support and we also audit them to ensure that prevention policies are being applied. And lastly, we have individual accountability, which is probably the best known aspect of what SafeSport does, and it makes up the largest proportion of our staff as well. We intake reports and we investigate allegations of abuse and misconduct that violate the SafeSport Code. And we also impose sanctions to limit or ban those who do harm from participating in the Olympic and Paralympic sport. And now with the foundation set, I want to move on to some highlights from last year. They're highlighted and included in our annual report that I said was released earlier today. In 2025 alone, SafeSport delivered 1.64 million online courses. And since our inception, we've delivered 9 million courses. And that's to over 4.2 million learners. So 4.2 million different individuals took our courses. Last year, our team delivered 24 live trainings as well. So we not only do the online training, but we show up live and about 1,400 learners have got to participate. This education, I believe, lays the foundation for participants to be able to both recognize and prevent abuse, but also respond to abuse and misconduct when they see it. Looking to the NGB safeguarding audit chart, which is the next slide, effective athlete safeguarding requires, or the next thing on the slide, requires prevention-focused systems to take root in the DNA of sport governing bodies. Our team provides assistance to NGBs in implementing safeguarding standards and also annually conducts audits to provide an independent assessment of each safeguarding program at NGBs, and it reinforces structures that support participant safety. All in all, in 2025, we conducted 284 audits across the Olympic movement since our inception. And so this past year, we audited all the NGBs. Audit results are available online, and a link will be provided to the attendees after the program. We have some new, we've got the slides kind of mixed up because I haven't been saying which slide, so sorry. We have some new resources that we have unveiled in 2025 as well. We completed the important educational resources and research. And first one that we did was our new digital resource library, which is easy to use. It's searchable database that helps you find the resources that best fit your role and responsibility in sport. And last year, we also invested in process education. So this helps our participants in a process better understand the investigations and the processes they're asked to participate in. We have a new interactive response and resolution flowchart. So what this flowchart does is enables individuals to, explore the various stages of the process depending on their specific circumstance so that they can really understand what to expect and how to engage in the process. And earlier this year, we released the results of our first ever coaches survey, which was really well received. Athletes know, and I know firsthand, how coaches can be really critical leaders and champions, particularly of well-being within the sports ecosystem. They're the ones that are running practice, and they can see when an athlete is having challenges. And so this coaches survey allowed us to better serve and support this important stakeholder group. And then in turn, we'll be able to enhance our training and education while we lay the foundation and the groundwork for further research ahead of LA28. Next slide, please. So the next thing that I think is huge is that we were able to address one of the biggest areas of criticism for SafeSport, which is the length of time it takes to resolve cases. One of the biggest things I heard when I came on board, I'd read the articles, been part of the U.S. Congressional Commission on the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic movement back in 2023 and 2024. And so I had seen all the data and the volume of reports that were combined with the fact that the SafeSport had static funding, and it made it really difficult to meet the growing demand, as I talked about, the exponential number of cases, which grew to 9,700 last year, up from 20% the year prior. And reports of abuse are coming in at an even higher rate so far this year. As I started at SafeSport, I was pleasantly surprised to learn that some of the process improvements made in the spring of 2024, so a little over 2 years ago, are really starting to bear fruit. And we believe that due to enhanced operating procedures, increased collaboration between our legal and investigative teams, and other departmental improvements, that SafeSport was able to reduce the time it takes to resolve cases, even though we've seen this huge increase in case volume. The chart shows that we have reduced case resolution time by 25% across all the different outcome types, even while the number of cases has grown by 30%. For fully adjudicated cases, which are those cases that have gone start to finish through our entire process, and they're more time consuming, of course, to resolve, we've reduced case resolution time by 9%. And this, again, is while the number of these cases has grown by 23%. So, of course, there are outliers out there due to the complexity of the cases and the fact that participation in our process is voluntary. We can't compel people to participate, but we are committed to continuous improvement. We also recognize that it may be difficult to continue this downward trend in resolution times because cases are continuing to grow exponentially. And our funding has unfortunately remained pretty static, and our capacity remains fixed as a result. The next slide is case backlog reduction. Our team has worked significantly to reduce the backlog of cases that have been lingering open in our system for 2 years or more. As of today, that number has gone down by 92% since January of 2024, and it currently stands at 8 open cases. So, a huge kudos to the team for the last couple of years for we're really being intentional about clearing out those cases that, again, have been around for 2 years or longer, down to 8. The next slide is really starting to talk about, we're going to transition now to talk about our strategic path forward. And on the next slide, you can look at our 2025 annual report if you want to see the complete rundown of what happened in 2025. But as we transition to our strategic path forward, I want to talk about this internal staff cultural audit that we did. And as I mentioned, that was the first step in laying the foundation for a strategic plan. We wanted to find out what our stakeholders need from us and start first internally to look at our own staff. And we use a third party to provide employee anonymity and also to encourage candor. You know, they're not going to give that candid response if they know that their name is going to be known. So throughout this process, I learned that SafeSport is managed by a team of committed professionals, athletes, and survivors who believe deeply in our mission. They believe in the imperative to get it right, and they also want to drive impactful change. I've just been so impressed by, again, the folks that work for SafeSport. They're here for the right reasons, and they're doing an amazing job. The audit also revealed opportunities for improvement related to leadership turnover. I'm the third CEO in the span of 9 months through this transition between 25 and 2026. And so that's a lot. And that certainly was cited in the cultural survey. Also, we heard about barriers to cross-departmental collaboration and a lack of overall organizational strategy and vision. So the strategic plan is certainly addressing that. To a person, I've been impressed by the depth of subject matter expertise, work ethic, and commitment to the mission I've seen among our SafeSport staff. And that's why their concerns are guiding our strategy to foster a people-first culture of professional growth, leadership development, personal well-being, and accountability. Next slide talks about our national listening tour. Once we got the pulse internally, then we got input from athletes and other external stakeholders throughout the ecosystem. And we did that through a national listening tour, which included a survey, focus groups, and one-on-one interviews. And these responses captured a broad cross-section of the SafeSport system that included athletes, coaches, administrators, advocates. We had over 40 sports participate, over 1,100 people responded to the survey. It was amazing. And the breadth of participation really provides a diverse and representative view of the SafeSport system. Next slide really shows us that the foundation is strong. On the positive side, we heard that the vast majority of stakeholders support the center's mission, and they credit SafeSport with the education and prevention work that we're doing for raising awareness about the issues of athlete safety and well-being. On the next slide, it also talks about where they think we need to improve. So some more constructive criticism. That's in the speed and the transparency of the response and resolution process. They want us to improve the overall communication, both internally and externally. They want us to standardize decision-making and sanctioning, to streamline training and audit requirements, and to clarify this SafeSport system, who does what, what are the jurisdictional lines among all the different entities. These recommendations have guided the development of our new mission, vision, and strategy. Our new mission statement went through multiple iterations, and it's based on feedback from athletes and others. And we landed on "We lead the movement to make sports safer for all." So as you can see, the essence of our purpose hasn't changed. We've just clarified how we express that purpose. And by the Los Angeles 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games, we strive for the U.S. Center for SafeSport to be a model of operational excellence. We want it to be trusted by athletes and stakeholders and the entire U.S. sport community. Our first strategy, next slide, please, is to elevate our programs and services so that we can enhance understanding and the experience that people have with SafeSport. There are several tactics in this strategy focused primarily on improving our ability to deliver on our three core pillars that we discussed earlier. The first is to expedite our response and resolution process. We want to make it easier for people to navigate our process. We want to increase communication with participants in the process, and we are implementing systems, technology, etc., to ensure consistent sanctions. Next is SafeSport system coordination. We want to improve how organizations and systems work together to streamline the SafeSport system, while we also clarify the center's role and scope. There's always questions about who we serve and what we serve. We want to address those as well. We want to evolve the audit process by developing a more prevention-focused audit framework with the national governing bodies that both drives their organizational development and the accountability. We want to develop targeted education that's role-specific and sport-specific, both education and tools for our athletes, for parents, sports organizations, and other stakeholders within the movement and outside of the movement. Technology improvements, as I said, we want to employ new technology. Our technology infrastructure was one of the things that our staff certainly talked about. And it is also something that can allow us to create this on-demand education that people want and need, and also facilitate more efficient case management. And we want to develop stronger policies, training, education, and data collection related to grooming, prevention, and response. Our next slide is strategy 2, and it's to coordinate with our athlete and stakeholder communities to optimize safeguarding in sport. And these tactics are having a better, stronger, more intentional stakeholder engagement model. So we'll be having annual community listening campaign, and we'll have more public events like this one. Field engagement is important. We want to deploy our leadership and our staff to events across the country with our NGBs in a non-audit capacity. So we're not coming to audit them or do anything else. We just want to foster relationships within and throughout the sport community. Safety culture metrics. We talk about changing American sport culture to put athlete well-being and safety at the center. And we need to be able to measure how culture change is happening as it relates to sport safety. Sport champions. We want an ambassador program to help accelerate adoption of the center's prevention and reporting policies. We can get, key influencers to really influence young athletes as they're coming up, parents and others in sport communities across the United States. And last tactic here for number 2, strategy 2, is a new SafeSport Summit. We've been doing a NGB Summit every other year for several years, which has been very successful. We want to continue doing that, and we want to add a day and a half of a SafeSport Summit, which will include a variety of organizations, both in and outside the Olympic and Paralympic movement, to facilitate collaboration and the sharing of best practices, because the better all sports are at keeping athletes safe, the better the Olympic movement and Paralympic movement is as well. Our third strategy is to build a people-first culture and a sustainable operating model that strengthens our capacity to deliver on our mission. This is about our people. This is our internal capacity and building that so that we're able to do all the things we talked about in strategies 1 and 2. The first is the people-first culture. We want to invest in our people with stronger leadership training, better wellness benefits, more wellness benefits, and also rewards and recognition for the great work that they're doing. We want to create a culture of accountability and transparency. And we also need to transform our human resources operations to boost employee experience, their productivity, and also retention. The second half of this strategy 3 is to build a scalable operating model to enable organizational growth. We want to strengthen our internal policies and our governance structures. And we also want to increase our revenue by employing an enhanced training platform and a new fundraising strategy to raise the additional resources to support this exponential growth in the number of reports we're getting and enable the center to be able to adjust and work in that regard. So each of these three strategies, we're going to trickle down to departmental goals, individual goals, because we want to ensure that there's alignment throughout the organization to ensure that we're all rowing in the same direction and towards the same set of goals. Today, next slide, please. We're operating a new chapter. We are charting the course to LA and beyond to best serve athletes in the entire SafeSport system. And today, we're starting by unveiling our new strategic plan and we'll continue to engage with athletes and stakeholders. We want to seek your feedback and learn ways that we can continuously improve. And we'll keep you apprised of any key developments in the coming months as we prepare for our next formal public update in January of 2027. Thank you for your support of SafeSport, and together I know that we will lead the movement to make sports safer for all. I'm going to turn it back now to Lisa for some questions that have been submitted, and then we'll open it up, as we said earlier, for live Q&A as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that helpful overview, Benita. You certainly have been sprinting these first 2 months on the job.
Yes,
And maybe you can hurdle over anything. So it's great to see the progress being made. I appreciate the approach to demystifying the process. And as you acknowledged, SafeSport is at an inflection point with a lot of work ahead to realize the vision you've set for the organization. With that, I want to dig in a little bit more. First off, your strategic plan is ambitious. How do you plan to resource it?
Well, the good news, Lisa, is a lot of these ongoing improvements are already in place, the new standard operating procedures, and we think they'll continue to bear fruit. And a lot of the tactics don't require additional funding, but additional focus. So not only of just me and the leadership team, but the entire organization aligning around those goals and those tactics. It's also going to guide our 2027 budget process. And I've also baked into the plan the opportunity to invest in diversifying our revenue. So we backfilled a position, a VP of development and fundraising position to lead that work. So it's a combination of, more of the same of the process improvements, baking into the budget anything new that we have to do for next year and beyond, and then raising new funds and resources to be able to scale the work that we're doing.
Yeah, that's, the budgets are tight. And I think it's great that you have a new person that is going to be focusing on raising additional funds. Some athletes have described a lack of communication. How are communication standards changing?
Well, communications from the center have definitely improved in recent years. There's been more emphasis on trauma-informed care and process navigation. We talked about the Athlete Survivors Assist that has informed that for us and really is continuing to help us with that side of things. And we now consult with claimants early on. We want to find out, how would you like to receive communications? How often from the center? And then we work to ensure that those touch points happen. And we know, particularly for cases that take a longer time to reach an outcome, that, this regular communication is really important. So I mentioned earlier that we've also ramped up our process education resources, and those are the resources that let people understand what is happening in the process, what to expect. And those team members have backgrounds in victim advocacy, social work, and education. And they use a trauma-informed approach that focuses on helping each person and meeting them where they are and giving them what they need.
Great. You said you're focusing more on this trauma-informed, but how exactly is SafeSport working to reduce the re-traumatization during investigations?
Yeah, that can certainly happen, right? I mean, we are trying to improve communications, as I said earlier, and we've also updated the SafeSport code so that individuals within the claim, response and resolution process are allowed to have both an advisor and a support person of their choosing. And the Athlete Survivors Assist is supporting these trauma-informed practices, both with our processes, but also with the communication with our people in the process. We have also implemented a comprehensive trauma sensitivity training curriculum for our response and resolution team. So not just the people doing the intake or the investigations, but the entire team, which is the bulk of our staff.
Now, that's great to hear. I know that in between phase of reporting and then waiting is always a challenge for
Absolutely.
athletes. Can you provide us an update related to the administrative holds and closures of cases?
Certainly. In 2024, in response to greater calls for transparency and understanding of case outcomes, SafeSport, and updated case outcome definitions, administrative holds and administrative closures. And so now cases that have the potential to be reopened if new information comes to light are categorized as administrative holds. So in addition, we also provide subcategories to explain why a case may be held. So it'll say administrative hold, but it'll say due to insufficient information or due to the fact that a claimant declined participation or the fact that the claimant may be unidentified. So those are opportunities if more information comes to light or someone in the process decides to participate and we get more information, we can take that off hold and reopen those cases. A note about administrative holds is that, we have to have evidence in order to move forward with the case beyond the initial report or of allegations. And given the center's lack of subpoena power, we can't compel someone to participate in our process like maybe law enforcement or the court system can do. People volunteer to participate. And we also want to ensure that our process respects the decision of a survivor whether or not to participate in our process. So when you see that the claimant may have declined to participate or the person impacted directly, we're not going to force that person to do that. We respect their decision. And lastly, if you're listening today, I want you to know you're all members of this SafeSport system. And if you have information that you think might be helpful to a case, I want to encourage you to participate and provide as much information as you can and to respond to any requests for information or to set up a time to chat or be interviewed. You do have some modicum of power and influence as you participate in the system to provide all the information that you can. Related to administrative closures, those are cases that are likely to remain closed, barring exceptional circumstances. We have all the information we think we need. It's closed, and unless something, like I said, exceptional comes along, they will remain closed. But most of these fall into the administrative hold category.
And I think it is important for those who make claims to understand when they're asked repeatedly, do you have more information? It is to get just what you said, more evidence to.
Yeah, so that we can reopen the cases that it may have been closed for one of those reasons and others. A breakdown of the case outcomes for 2025. It's on page 28 of the annual report that you'll have a link to.
I think oftentimes it feels like they're being not believed, but I think it's really just trying to push to get more evidence.
Absolutely. Without the evidence, we can't move forward. And that's part of the due process that we referred to a little earlier.
Safe sporting is a term that is thrown around. What safeguards exist to prevent false reporting?
Yes, I've definitely heard that term since I got on board. I didn't know it was such a thing, but it is. And I'll just reiterate that there has to be evidence in order to move forward with a case. We have very professional folks doing this work in our response and resolution. The people who intake these reports are very good at what they do. The investigators, they're Title IX investigators and former police detectives, and they are trained to investigate these cases. And so false reports of sexual abuse and misconduct ultimately are statistically rare. And if and when they happen, we are able to determine that something is not quite right. And so for anyone who knowingly makes a false report, it's a violation of the SafeSport code. And we take this very seriously. And any suspected false reporting needs to be reported. So if you know of someone who has filed a false report, please let us know and we'll handle it accordingly. we heard some of these concerns, particularly from athletes last summer, and we launched some new educational content on Instagram. And that's the main social media channel that we use for engaging with athletes in particular. And we plan on continuing to do this education around this topic.
And it clogs up your vital resources. You have such limited resources, and for any perhaps non-truth being put out there just hurts everybody.
Exactly.
And then, there's many who say, or some who claim that there's a lack of due process. What do you say to those people?
Yeah, the statute requires that the center provide procedural due process. I'm learning all these new terms, and it really means that we're committed to fair and impartial investigations, and we really take that seriously. We have to have evidence. I can't say that enough to proceed with an investigation, and we have to meet a preponderance of evidence standard, which means that we can prove it's more likely than not that something happened. Respondents can contest, as part of the due process, that you can contest both temporary measures that may have been levied against them, which may be implemented while an investigation is going on. So someone files a report and we want to ensure just be more safe than sorry. We impose temporary measures and they can contest those, or they can also contest the final case outcome through a hearing and also through an arbitration panel. And those include independent judges that are not part of SafeSport. We also now offer both respondents and claimants a 14-day window. So once we've finished our investigation, we have all the evidence, they can review and respond to all the evidence on both sides prior to a sanctioning decision. And this, we believe, enhances the fairness and the clarity for both sides in the process.
Although I have many more questions I'd love to ask, we did promise at 2:40 we would open up to live questions from the audience. To access the Q&A function, please click on the three dots in the Zoom toolbar for more options. Remember that the center will not be able to speak to any specific cases, and questions should refrain from using any inappropriate language or behavior. Finally, there are several hundred people on the webinar, so please be generous with each other so that as many people as possible have the opportunity to ask a question. We'll do what we can to get through as many questions as possible in the next 20 or 15 minutes. So with that, I'm turning over. And first question, Benita, you mentioned technology improvements as a key priority. What does that roadmap look like, and what problems are you most urgently trying to solve?
Thanks for the question. I am excited to say that we are in the process of migrating to a new case management system. And that is going to be really key to speeding up our case management that, again, we've been criticized for in the past, but more importantly, providing the data and information and ease of communication between and among the individuals that are handing off, the people who do the intake, handing off to the investigators who hand it off to the lawyers for sanctioning and back and forth. And we want to make sure that the process works as smoothly as possible. We also will have the opportunity for the national governing bodies to be able to log in and see the status of the cases that they're participating or that their participants are a part of with SafeSport. And there is ultimately potential for those national governing bodies to join us and be a part of the same system. So as they're investigating cases that we send back to the national governing bodies, they might be able to do that on the same platform. So all of this should probably really start to bear fruit in the first quarter of 2027. As you might understand, we're talking migration of now over 9 years of data from one case management system to another, the training and development for the team using it. We're also now using Tableau to better visualize data that's coming out of the system. So yeah, this is all happening in real time. The national governing bodies this summer will have a chance to start peeking around and looking around. And just because you migrate to a new system, you all understand, you've all done it before. That means also that there'll be continuous improvement to even this brand new state-of-the-art system that we'll be on using forward. The other thing that we're doing, which is a little bit further behind in the process, is employing a new learning management system. So that'll allow us to provide better training and education online and in person, but it would give us the opportunity to do that. We want to also update our SafeSport app. And all of three of those things, I think, collectively will enhance the experience that people have with SafeSport across the board.
Great. This is from Elizabeth and Benita. Thank you for today. My question is related to internal accountability. How will you track and check for, follow through on your three strategies?
Absolutely. So we have a performance scorecard that we are developing. I hired a new director of strategic alignment, and that individual is charged with both, taking our strategic plan, evolving it, ensuring all the changes that we've made over the last few months as we've gone back to our stakeholders to get their feedback have been implemented. But now, implementation is where the rubber meets the road. It's the actual execution of this strategy that's going to be the most important. And who's going to implement it but the staff? So the staff has to be fully bought in at the department level and at the individual level. So everybody will have some goals on their annual goals. And for now, it'll be the latter 6 months of 2026. And then as we move into 2027, same thing. We'll have, kind of gotten used to the rigor of having individuals be accountable to certain goals and departments as well. And we'll use this scorecard to track whether we're in the green or yellow or red. So we'll know. Sometimes it'll have to do with the fact that we haven't even started yet. Based upon the plan, it's not supposed to go into effect yet. In other cases, hopefully we'll be on track. And there may be circumstances that come up that push us a little bit behind. But we'll keep our finger on the pulse, and our director of strategic alignment will certainly let us know and raise the red flag if we're having challenges. So we feel fairly confident that we will have systems in place. And what we're doing is using the latter 6 months of 2026 to really get used to what that reporting looks like, what that tracking looks like, what that communication looks like between and among our staff and also with our board to hold each other accountable and ourselves accountable.
And Benita, I think you would also welcome any feedback from the members. I mean, you're doing this for the people in this community.
Absolutely. So yes, so that constant feedback loop, that not constant, but the feedback loop that I addressed earlier, we did this really comprehensive stakeholder listening tour the first part of this year as I came on board, and we'll do something similar every year. Maybe not as comprehensive every year, but certainly we'll do the deep dive every so often, and we'll have a loop where we'll get the feedback. We'll tell you what the feedback is today. We'll tell you what we're going to do about it like we did today. And we'll come back and say, okay, here's the feedback. Here's what we told you we were going to do. Here's what we've done. And here's what we plan to do moving forward. As we evolve, as we accomplish things on the plan, there'll be new strategies, new tactics that we'll develop, and we'll keep you in the loop the whole way through.
Another one, we have one from Christian. Congratulations on a fantastic year.
Yeah.
Can you hear your thoughts on the role the center plays in raising safeguarding standards of youth organizations outside of the movement, both governing bodies and private youth organizations?
And is this the responsibility we have or what we do about it? I'm sorry, could you rephrase that?
How do you feel that the efforts that you're making at
Okay.
the center is impacting those outside of the Olympic
Of the
movement?
movement. Correct. I think when I spoke earlier about culture change in sport and what SafeSport is doing to impact that and helping people understand who SafeSport is, what we do, but more importantly, the behavioral things that they need to be looking for, particularly between athletes and minors, et cetera, adhering to the SafeSport code, adhering to the map. Those things, I talked about it from a personal standpoint. I have moved as an athlete throughout the sports ecosystem as a youth athlete, as a high school athlete, as a college athlete, as a Team USA athlete. And so some of those organizations may be within the Olympic and Paralympic movements, others are not. And so I think it's really important for our education resources and tools to get out to as many people as possible. And that's certainly part of, from a resource generation standpoint, an opportunity for the center because we provide those resources for free to those individuals inside the movement, but outside the movement, you have the opportunity to access those as well. And so we call that customer success. We have a whole department in SafeSport that manages that. And if you want access beyond just the free materials that are on our website, please contact us and let us know, and we can make that available to you. It's really important to us that we see that culture change, because that's the thing that's really going, that's how we help athlete safety take hold and take root. When I think about, as we prepare for Los Angeles, we want to go there with a gold medal plan for athlete safeguarding. And that really does include, yes, we want to see our athletes perform to the best of their ability, but we want as much emphasis on their safety and well-being as we're putting on athlete performance. And yes, that goes for Team USA and our best athletes, but also at the grassroots. And the grassroots includes many organizations outside of the movement. And I think our education, resources, our research, et cetera, is the place and our opportunity to have that impact.
This next question is from Tori, a survivor of childhood sexual abuse by a gymnastics coach, and is now working as an advocate teaching grooming prevention. It's an unfortunate situation, but she has taken SafeSport training online multiple times, and the content is strong. But she struggles to use the effectiveness of the online format. In person for live online conversations for teams after the online training would be a great addition. Is there something you see in the future?
Well, we are currently, first of all, I just want to say thank you for speaking up by identifying yourself as a survivor. That takes a lot of courage, and we really appreciate you for that. I also would say that we do provide in-person training upon request, particularly for NGBs in those organizations within the Olympic and Paralympic movement. We are standing up the opportunity to provide more of that kind of robust engagement with folks outside of the Olympic and Paralympic movement. I think when I talked about the new learning management system, which again is on a timeline that's much longer, unfortunately, than the new case management system, but in the next year, year and a half, you will definitely be able to have, in the interim as well, more sport specific and role specific, and also more, I think, putting the education resources into kind of chunks so that you're more on demand, if you will, able to access the content in smaller portions so that you don't have to sit down for an hour and a half to do the course. I also think the resources on our website, even now, might be an opportunity to use and refresh your memory, if you will. If you took the course 3 months ago or 6 months ago, you may be wanting to recall something. Please access our website. There are a lot of materials on there, I believe, that can help in the interim.
Right. We are just about ready for our closing, but I do have one last question for you. Do you believe that sports are safer now than before SafeSport was created?
I do believe sports are safer now than before SafeSport was created. It was certainly borne out by the response to the survey, where people said they felt like that SafeSport has had an impact in raising awareness and making sports safer. So I can only go by the folks that responded and really feel proud and thankful that is true. But we know there's still a lot of work left to do. We see the increase in reports as evidence that more and more people know that we exist and they feel more comfortable coming forward. And we also heard through our listening tour that, like I said, that the safety and awareness is increased due to our work. So we've seen athletes achieve excellence despite harmful sports settings. But I just, think about what more they could achieve if all sport environments were safe and supportive. And our athletes deserve nothing less. And that really what motivates me every single day.
And Benita, I work with many national Olympic committees around the world, and I can tell you that what we started here in the United States with SafeSport has really made impacts around the world. And just talking about SafeSport is so important, and it hasn't been that way for many years. So
Well,
congratulations
you should
to
know, Lisa, you've been to what, every Olympic Games since when?
1984 winter Sarajevo.
Oh,
So
wow. That's amazing. And she takes students along with her at GW. So thank you for your service to the movement as well, Lisa. And thank you to you for moderating today. It was important for us to have someone like you and of your stature to join us, and I don't think we could have picked anyone better. So thank you, Lisa.
Appreciate it and an honor to be here. Before we close out, Benita, can you share next steps and final remarks?
Certainly. Like I said, I think Lisa said earlier, the recording of the webinar is going to be made available on our website very shortly. And there are also multiple links in the chat that you can access the resources that we mentioned in the presentation. There's also a short survey. So if you have time now, just click on that link, let us know how we did so that the next time we do this, hopefully in January or planning on January, that we can do a better job. We'll also be following up if there were questions that happened to be asked that we couldn't answer live here today. We'll also be sending a follow-up email. It'll have the brief survey and also a link to the recording and some of the resources as well. So you'll have a chance to see those resources again. And like I said, we're going to host events like this twice a year moving forward. So January to tell you what we're going to do, and in June to say what we've done and what we've heard. And so we'll have this continuous cadence. Please join us. I said we had a great turnout today, and we hope that you'll stay engaged moving forward. And we promise to keep you posted as we go along. Thanks, everybody, for joining. We look forward to working with all of you to make sports safer for all.